pork pie hats. British people in pork pie hats. So dumb.
Best sound check ever, though. Welcome to the Honest Designers Show, your transparent look into life as a modern designer. My name's Tom Ross, and I'm the founder at designcuts.com. And this week I'm joined by my fellow Brit and hand lettering expert, Ian Barnard, and American retro design expert, Dustin Lee. I'm afraid Lisa couldn't join us today, but she'll be back next time. This week we talk all about the best ways to get your creative work in front of more people. We try to get super tactical in this episode and share many actionable tips on how to get your design work out there more. Without further ado, let's get into the show. So today we're talking all about how to get your work in front of more people. Because as designers, that tends to feel pretty nice, right? You're getting your work out there, you're reaching new audiences, you're getting new fans, maybe new customers, all that kind of good stuff. Are we all in agreement that is probably a pretty common aim with designers?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Episode done.
Yeah. The thing is, it's normally Lisa who starts talking, so I'm just like a bit out of sorts.
Yeah. So Ian and I are very sleepy. Dustin's just woken up and Lisa's not here. So Lord knows how today's going to
go. The pressure.
I know, immense pressure. I don't like these male-dominated shows as well. We miss the female touch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not good. The dynamic is all off.
Yeah, it really is. I feel like one of us needs to kind of adopt a South African accent. And I'm going to nominate you, Dustin. I'm not even going to put the listeners through it. Okay, so let's jump in.
Good call.
How do you guys feel like you get your work in front of more people? And I appreciate mainly what you're doing is kind of product focused. If we can skew a bit more towards like general design work, because I think that's going to help more of the listeners, because product creators are probably in the minority. Like Ian, for example, go on, Mr. Social Media, kick it off. You do all kinds of lettering work all the time. How do you actually get it in front of new people rather than just existing people?
I think being on multiple platforms helps with that. And also, I find actually a lot of people see my stuff maybe on Google Images and Pinterest. And two of those are sort of combined because a lot of images you see on Google Images is linked into Pinterest one. So, and also Dribble as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Behance. Yeah. I think there's specific for work wise. I think specific ones like Behance and Dribble and Pinterest, I think are really good to get for client work. I think. I find, sometimes I get through Instagram. There is also YouTube as well. But I think, a lot of when I ask people and I ask clients, where did you find my work? They usually, someone found me on Pinterest, but they didn't know whose work it was. And Pinterest has this weird thing is if you just like upload an image to the site and don't put any information or link it to anything, you end up in this Pinterest loop. Where you just you click on it and it just takes you back to Pinterest again, and it doesn't go anywhere. So
you're never getting out as well.
No,
once you're in there.
And something.
In fact, that's where Lisa is this week. She's stuck in Pinterest.
Yeah, we couldn't get her
out for the poor woman.
That's pretty funny to think about.
But I think, I think going where. I think actually something like we've spoken about before, like LinkedIn is probably quite a place you could get your work in front of people, because there's so many people on that are from companies that need design work, and so be that person on LinkedIn who brings a bit of color to a very corporate platform, social platform.
I think what you're talking about is looking for the white space.
finding where it's
less noisy, right?
Yeah, because the internet is a very noisy place, and I think there's specific areas where you could be really channeling your work and your focus to get it in front of people.
I was talking to the team about this recently, and I'd been doing some reading about it and so on. And one approach is to think about who you're trying to reach before you do the work, rather than doing the work and then trying to reach the people. And I appreciate that might stifle some people's creativity, but it shouldn't necessarily, because as designers or artists or whatever, shouldn't we often have someone in mind? I know for functional design work, that's the case. We're targeting a commuter or a window shopper or whatever it might be. And even with art, it's like, who am I trying to speak to with this piece? So why should it be any different with distribution and getting your work in front of people? If you're thinking, actually, there's this group over here and I really want to tap into them, so I'm going to create some art around that and put it on a platform where those people are.
I was reading a book by... It's so weird when you're on a podcast because sometimes you say words for the first time that you realize you've never said aloud. Mary Kate McDevitt, is that how you say her name? McDevitt?
Yeah.
Which one? Which one?
So. I thought I only heard the same words.
Oh, Mary Kate McDevitt or Mary Kate McDevitt? Whatever it is. Anyways, sorry, Mary Kate. One of those ways is wrong. I was reading her book, and she brought up something I hadn't really thought about. She said, "Here's the difference between someone who draws and an illustrator. An illustrator is doing it commercially with a purpose for a client in mind, whereas drawing is just making something. So, for instance, like when I did my 100-day Instagram thing, that was just drawing. I was just making stuff. I didn't have a plan for it necessarily. Illustrating is when you do it with a purpose, and that kind of goes back to what you're saying, like." The ability to think about who your audience is literally an extension of the skill that's going to help you to get a following. And it's interesting because when you look at the people that are successful, like go look at 10 Instagram accounts you love or 10 whatever account, Dribble account, LinkedIn, whatever it is. Go look at it and you'll find like people that tend to get in front of people tend to be promoters. They have a little bit of P.T. Barnum in them, like they, perfect example is Scotty Russell from Perspective Collective. He does hand lettering work, but he's as equally good a promoter as he is a lettering artist. He's constantly interacting with his community. He's doing giveaways. He's doing hashtags. He's partnering with other people. He's being on other podcasts. He's trying new things. He's going to conferences and talking one by one, brick by brick, meeting people. And I think that the people that really tend to be successful, with rare exception, are promoters.
Yeah. And instantly I can hear half the listeners go, "Oh no, dirty word. Promotion. I don't like it." I know certainly some.
I'd be one of those.
Yeah. But yeah, I would tend to agree. I think maybe ways of reframing that. So that doesn't have to mean you're a marketer extraordinaire, but I think literally having the mindset of how am I going to get in front of new people makes you act more like a promoter, whether you label it as that or not. And there are a lot of ways to do it. Like I'll give you guys two right now off the top of my head. One is something like a public challenge like Inktober or something, where a bunch of people are doing it. It's using a hashtag normally on a platform like Instagram. You jump on that, you put your work out, and the other people participating will naturally come across your work because they're checking the hashtag out. Super easy way to pick up new fans and like-minded people and that kind of thing. Way number two, we just launched a forum at Design Cuts. Like Ian's jumping on a call tomorrow there. Well, at the time of this recording, Dustin
done it.
Yeah. Hopefully it went incredibly well when by the time this goes out. Dustin, I don't know if you've seen it, but to give you guys context, there's a section in there for like share your work and get feedback, and people jump on and say positive stuff about it. If you're looking to get your work in front of people, there's another way. Like there are some pretty obvious ways out there, but I feel like often a big blocker is people aren't even willing to give them the time of day, right? But when you start putting that more front of mind, it's like, I need to get my work in front of new people. It's like, there's literally two ways there. How many people listening are going to go do them? I don't know, but they should if that's their goal.
Well, and there's that, field of dreams, build it and they will come mentality that I think comes particularly for artists. If my art is good enough, it will speak for itself and people will just come find it and love it. And you brought up a good point. That's why it's so good, like talking to you guys. Cause like, I think of it as the word promoter, but really it's just like sharing stuff in a way that's beneficial to other people. Like me and you were talking about webinars before we started the recording. Webinars get work in front of people, but it's because like when I do them or, when you do them in the future or whatever, you're saying, hey, let us teach you something. People come and you teach them. It's promoting myself. It's promoting the other person on the webinar. But that's just almost like a byproduct, like something that happens as a result of doing something for other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely.
And I think teaching generally, you can set up your own course for free on like Skillshare. They have like actual courses about doing courses or,
so meta.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. So meta, man.
Should you do a course on how to navigate the course page about doing courses?
And now we're teaching people about the course thing that teaches the course.
It's like an inception.
Like mirrors reflecting into each other.
But I think, I've seen people sort of be more well known through teaching, whether that is through like Skillshare, Udemy, through their own thing, through YouTube. So that's one way of putting yourself out there for new people to get hold of what you're doing. I think Facebook groups and doing Facebook Live and Instagram Live is definitely a great one. Just sharing any skills that you may have. There's always going to be people who are learning or interested. Sometimes people like to watch these things, even if they have no interest in learning what you're teaching. They want to see you. They want to see someone doing what they do. And you never know. The thing is, you never know who's watching, because it could be like an art director from an agency, and they suddenly go, "This guy knows what he's doing. Let's get him on for some work here." Or
it's so interesting because like something that Tom, you had really taught me, or like I guess became a believer in from you, was the one-by-one interaction. Design Cuts is really built on, we're going to hire a lot of people, and then first it was just you, and we are going to interact individually with every person. I mean, whether it's on Facebook, wherever it is, you guys interact one-on-one. If I tweet to you guys, I know that someone is going to respond back to me. When I had a tragedy a little while back, you guys, sent me like some flowers for my wife.
Mm-hmm.
So at first, like I wasn't a believer until I saw you doing it, and I saw how well it worked for you. And then I realized when you do that, what happens is eventually like you hit 10, then 20, then 30, then 100, then 200, 300. And that's what I did when I first started Retro Supply, I realized. So when I first started, it was just a small group of customers. Turned out one of those customers was a guy named Lenny Terenzi who kept buying my stuff. He owns a studio called Hey Monkey Design, but he's also like involved in the AIGA on the East Coast. He's also one of the people that makes Creative South, which is a conference here in the United States. And so one day he writes me, don't know who he is. I've just built a relationship one by one by writing him. And he says, hey, do you want to come talk at Creative South? Fly you out, pay for your hotel. You don't know who you're talking to. So next thing you know, that I go to that, I get recognition from being at this workshop. I meet someone else who puts me onto their podcast. I meet someone else I partner with. But that all started with those one-by-one interactions, and then those branch out. I mean, think about it. Every single time something gets big, it's by one-by-one interactions that's kind of branch out.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm a huge advocate of them, as you said. And people really need to realize it's quality over quantity. And sometimes that's unknown. Sometimes like that, you're talking to a stranger and it becomes something. And you just have to realize like it's not necessarily about how many people you're getting in front of. It's just that one out of those 100 people could be the right person to open a door. So you need to remain open-minded with it. I would say as well, we can't have this discussion without touching on the fact of why do you want to get in front of more people? Because there will be different motivations around that. Like for some people, it's like, I need to start selling prints of my artwork and I need to reach new people. For other people, it could just be ego driven of, well, I'm going to feel good when I have an audience of 1,000 people, not 100 people. And that's probably a misnomer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's funny too, is like when you start thinking about like, I want to do it for my ego, like, because I do that sometimes, like, I mean, not intentionally, but you just like all of a sudden it takes the wheel and you don't realize it. And you put something out trying to impress people with how cool the artwork is or how cool something that you're doing is. And then like it gets a few likes. And then you do something else where you're like sharing something personal or you're sharing a tip or you're expressing a real emotion about something and you're not thinking. And then people love it. And you're like, oh yeah, people love humans.
Yeah.
I mean, a good way to get in front of
Forgot about
people
that.
is to just be a human being. I know it sounds really like dumb and obvious, but I notice whenever I do that, it works better, and yet I still forget it constantly.
How about you, Ian? Got any other ways?
I was thinking about something Dustin said, and I was like, actually, that something you have to bear in mind is, or there's a constant battle, and there is in my head, that trying to impress your peers versus trying to inspire and educate and help those who are just starting out or those on the journey, to where you're at. And they're completely two different audiences. And you have to think, like, actually, the peers don't matter. You have to put them to the side, impressing them and stuff like that. Because one, they don't pay for any of your work. They don't, they're just like doing similar stuff to you. It's these people who are engaged with your work and who are willing to buy stuff off you are the ones that mean you can do what you can do. And I think you have to really try and push it. And that means that you might not get as many likes. Like my likes and comments and stuff like that can fluctuate on completely. One day, yeah, it might be really low, and then one day it might be really high, and I don't know why. But it's all about whether the posts you're doing, the stuff you're putting out there is like, whether it's inspirational, whether it's educational, whether it's, helping other people. And yeah, I think getting like your focus right can really help to, and relate. Yeah, I really think, relationships has been a massive thing. Like, whether that's down to like collaborating with other people or whether just generally chatting, helping out other people.
Not being in a bubble, basically.
No.
I think the collaboration piece is huge. It's like the social scene of making friends or the dating scene or whatever. It's putting yourself out there, right? Just being open to like, hey man, love your work. Like maybe we could collaborate on this piece. And before you know it, you're doing something and the intent is pure. You're doing it for the right reasons and stuff starts to happen. But you just need to shift into that mindset of being open. You don't want to be the designer who's like burrowed away in their basement, operating in this little private bubble like a hermit, because funny enough, you're not going to get your work in front of people.
No.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably why I'm not very good at selling physical products, because unless I've got some ideas from things that help people, but like my finish, it's a finished product. It might be some clothing or it might be a print or something like that. I find the things that do the best are the things that help help people. Like my grid builder one, that helped and gave people confidence. And I think that's where things excel for me in particular, is when they're helping people. So, and that will always, with helping people, you get this two-way return. You get the encouragement that you're helping someone, and also they receive something from you as well. So it's like a two-way thing rather than just buy my product. It feels good, and it's less about the sort of money and stuff like that. For me, I wish I didn't have to earn the money. I could just constantly push out stuff and not have to worry about that side, but obviously we do.
Yeah.
So
that reminds me of a story of how Airbnb early on had done that, in terms of thinking about the other person, Reid Hoffman had shared the story of the guy who started LinkedIn, and he had said what Airbnb did is they said they got a photographer and they said, let's get somebody that uses Airbnb and photograph them across their entire trip and see how it is, and then look at the photos. And then once they looked at it, they said, would you mind if we make this like an amazing experience for you? And they said, like, we're going to make it like so amazing, like it would be almost impossible to scale. And then they had the same person go on the same trip, and they made it better for that one person. I mean, they realized the person waited forever in the airport. So they made it, I can't remember what they did. They did all sorts of things and made this adventure for this person. And once they did that, they talked to that person, and the guy literally started crying saying, this is the best trip I've ever been on. And they said, okay, we nailed it for one person. So now that we've nailed this trip for one person, nail it and scale it. By the way, I just invented that after
nail it and scale.
Gotta
nail it and scale it.
Scale it.
So
Can you say it like that?
you can think about that for your followers or for people that you want to watch you. So like talk to someone who like is interested in what you're doing and say like, what would make this really interesting for you? What would make this even better when I'm sharing my work? And then try to make it awesome for the one person, and then start doing that more often when you share stuff. I haven't done this yet. I just heard about it from Airbnb guy, but it seems like a great idea to me. I don't know. What do you think, Tom? Do you think that's a good idea?
Of course I do, Dustin. You are my wisest friend.
Well, no, I'm taking it from the Airbnb guy, but it sounds good to me. But what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's very cool. You know, I love that stuff. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
It sounds fun.
Yeah, it does. I think Ian.
We're horrible guessers.
Oh yeah, 100%. Ian, you touched on this, I think, at the start of the episode, but I don't want to not give it due importance. Multiple platforms, like you drastically increase your chances of reaching people when you're on a bunch of different platforms. Not all of them take as much time and care as like Instagram, for example. Like if you're on Dribble or Behance, you're uploading a piece or a project as it's ready. Whereas Instagram, you might be like posting on Instagram TV and stories every day and sharing and commenting on other people's stuff, etc. So they all have different like time commitments, but I think there's a lot to be said because you're going to be targeting totally different audiences on these different platforms, and they're all going to see something different in your work, right? The people on YouTube are going to want something different from you than the people on Dribble and the people on Behance and the people on Instagram.
Yeah. And yeah, you have to, it's quite hard you have to think, okay, because it could take up all your time if you were going to go and do all these different platforms and give it completely 100% of your attention. So I think like for Dribble, I just put my work up there, just once I've done a piece, put it up there, or done a job for someone, I put it up there with a bit of explanation of what it's about. Behance, it takes a little bit more longer because you have to put like multiple images, and the ones that seem to work the best is a really curated sort of like the process, going through the process, really nice images. Instagram is whatever I thought of doing that day. It's normally spare at the moment, that one. Facebook is sort of like an extension of Instagram, but like actually I've noticed certain nuances on there that's like very much just like the click fee side of things is my Facebook audience. And then you have like Twitter, which is more like, obviously that's more conversational. And so maybe I'm not very good at just putting up random tweets. There's people who can do it all the time and they're really entertaining. I can't. So it's maybe like a couple of tweets of a comment of what I'm thinking. All I do is like mainly around whether design or lettering. I usually put the post I've been working on for Instagram up there as well. A good thing to do is just interact with conversations that are already going on in Twitter, and that's another way of building up those relationships, because you never know when another designer might, getting to know other designers, so that then when an area of your expertise maybe pop up and they can think of you because you've made friends with them.
So I've got a specific example here. I've got one of my followers, Doris, who is a lovely lady who does illustrations, and they tend to be she's done a lot of like Christmassy looking ones recently, and they're really kind of traditional, but at the same time have some nice clean lines, and they're just really charming. So Doris wants to get her charming, Christmassy style illustrations out there to more people. How could she do that as a kind of real life case study for the listeners?
Does she need to earn money from them at the moment?
I would say want, not need. But
because I'm just thinking that I remember a tip from Chris Spooner. I've mentioned this before, like ages ago, maybe when he was on actually.
Mm-hmm.
But he recommended posting free work like to a site. So it could be free patterns for 6 months. And you'll see like people starting to inquire about your work. And so
even if she's not selling products, she could say, well, here's a PNG or a vector version of my illustrations, put it on a bunch of free sites to reach a wider audience, and then people discover her profile.
And I think there's a lot of like design sites like Creative Block. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's a case of like, okay, maybe do a tutorial for one of these places. I think you just, a blog post of, where she finds inspiration. There's always going to be people who find, because what happens is that there's this like, the more it's like, I don't know, like web of points you can put out into the internet that will lead back to you, rather than just having like it used to be the case that all you would have was breadcrumbs from like a blog post or even just a tweet can sometimes come up in search. Like, like say Pinterest and stuff like that. So multiple, I think, giving away free stuff is really helpful.
Contact bloggers and say, do you need some charming imagery to accompany your articles? And just give me a little credit at the bottom.
Yeah, I did that, and I was like, this was way before I was doing lettering. This was me doing like, I've done like, you can go on to ianbarnard.co.uk and you will find a list like a sort of blog style of just free resources, but they're like quite old now, and they're like maybe a logo template, maybe a picture of Peppa Pig, or like some free I'm trying to think what
I got to add to this because I remember you saying this. You've said this a couple of times to me. I think maybe like in a private conversation in the past. And I remember when Chris was on, you'd mentioned it, and it always sticks with me as such a good piece of advice regarding posting something every day for 6 months that's useful to people, which really sounds like that's the core. Like you're saying, like it doesn't have to be a logo template; it could be anything that's useful to people, but. It totally jives with this other piece of advice I got, or I read in a book, and it said, like, the price of having people start to take you seriously in what you're doing is that you post a ton of work. Like, I think the person I'm thinking of said, you have to put up like 100 pieces of solid work consistently before people start to take you seriously. So if they see, like, even if you have like 10 or 20 pieces on there, they'll speak, well, there's only 10 or 20. But when you consistently keep dishing it out, you've earned the title of illustrator or person that sells design goods or designer or type lettering art, whatever it is. And I think that's true. And that's kind of where I think that 6 month thing fits in. There's a price to be paid in terms of time commitment of doing something consistently.
And the thing is, if for instance, you get the momentum, like if someone finds you right at the beginning and you have no work to show, then that's quite hard to like, they're like, well, they haven't really done much. But like, say you've done a lot of work and then suddenly one of your things gets shared by like, maybe a massive YouTuber or something, or on a big blog, and they find you, and then you've got all this back catalogue of great work. They're going to go, wow, this person's really good. I'm going to promote all their stuff, or and then there's that momentum that you can keep going with because you've got all that other stuff. For me, because I was doing stuff every single day for like years and years and posting lettering work, it was like it took that long. It took like a couple of years for it to flow into the internet, like for it to start appearing on Pinterest and to start appearing on Google Images, and but the more work you put out there, the more likely it's going to get into these things. And then what happens is people might pick up And the thing is, you have to keep churning it out because there might be like one piece that really resonates with someone and gets shared around the internet. And I suppose that's what happened with some of my videos, is that I kept posting, not really happening. One video popped, and then that meant that people came and looked at my rest of my stuff and they go, oh, I might follow this guy. And so it's just keeping, I think, you say quality over quantity. I think that's really good for relationships, but then you have to turn it around in terms of the amount of work you put out there.
Put out dross at volume.
Or look at if you go on my YouTube channel and look at my first videos, you'll see that.
No, I'm kidding. Like, you're exactly right, because you don't want to be the perfectionist who never puts out anything.
No.
Well, and there's the proper place to put final work, and there's a proper place to put in progress work. Like stories are a great place to put your in progress stuff.
Yeah, completely.
That's really handy because it keeps your sort of feed a bit nicer. Because I used to sort of put a bit of rough stuff in it just didn't really fit in. But
I'll give you an example, right? So we were talking about the breadcrumbs, and that doesn't necessarily have to be on your platforms. It's not that you'd left a trace of your work on your Behance and your Dribbble. It should and is most effective when it's on other people's platforms in front of a bigger audience. And here's a great example of this, right? Celebrities. The new autograph is the selfie. And what do you think one of the biggest motivations, apart from being a nice person, celebrities have for taking selfies with people? Because every time they get a selfie, the person tags them up on social media and people discover them. And when they're taking photos with their peers who are other celebrities, they get in front of a really big audience. Like when a celebrity suddenly becomes buddies with The Rock or something, and then gets posted on his profile and tagged up, they see a massive surge. But they also get the long tail where they've taken selfies with 10,000 fans that year, and 10,000 people are like, this guy's the greatest thing ever, go check him out. And you can do the same with it. Like designers do this. Designers do this at design conferences. They go and take 200 selfies and they see a real spike in front of their name and their work getting in front of new people, because suddenly they're like the most popular guy at the conference being tagged up in everyone's posts. And like the same thing goes for your work all the time, right? You like find ways to get people tagging you up and sharing it.
And also, like something I used to get a lot of website work from was having your name as the designer of that website. It's a simple thing, but like people would say, "Oh, could you do this for us? Because we saw that you designed this website," because your name was at the bottom. And that was just like, that was one of the streams of of how I got new referrals. Because I didn't know, I've never advertised, not because I'm like, I've never advertised because I've got so much work coming. I didn't know how to, because like if I saw other people advertise and they'd get like, some, Joe Bloggs, a builder, trying to get business cards for like $10. But I found that, having your name on, like you say, on someone else's site promoting you really helped, whether that was you were the designer or you were mentioned in something. I think it's changing now a bit. And I think, getting yourself on a blog, but it's proactive. A lot of this is proactive. Don't wait around for them to come and ask you to do a tutorial.
Right.
Make it yourself, because if you're offering some free content, they're jump at the chance of that, because they're always trying to get content for their site, because it just generates them revenue from the ads they've got on there. So if you can provide something for free, we're not, obviously this is the grey area of working for free sort of stuff, but it just gets it does get your name out there. So having a think about, okay, this week I'm going to produce a tutorial on something and send it to this person, or a video. I'm going to produce a video doing something that's going to help someone within design, say.
There tends to be like an ascension that happens too, because like the best way to get in front of people is obviously to get like someone like, say, Ian on his Instagram to feature you. He's got like, I don't know, like 10 million people on his Instagram. So he can get you in front of a lot of people, but you have to kind of ascend to that. So like what I mean by that is, let's say you first get yourself onto a really small design blog. Maybe it has almost no traffic, but then like you can use that. And when you go to someone else to write a tutorial or to get an interview or whatever, you can say, I was featured on this blog. Then you jump up, one more little step to the next bigger thing. Then from that, you can say to someone even bigger, I have these two. You know what I mean? So you're creating these stair steps up. And I remember when I first started, it started with very small things. And then you start building enough of those. Here's a perfect example of this. Sorry, I didn't mean to go on this long. When I was doing stuff for LinkedIn, they said, well, let me introduce you to someone from How Conference. Maybe you could do a talk there. And I said, oh, that'd be great. And then I said, well, I've also done a talk at WMC Fest, and I've done one at Creative South. And they said, oh, well, all the better. It's so much easier to get in somewhere when you've already done them at some other conferences. Now, those conferences aren't quite as big as How. I mean, they're amazing conferences in what they are. But you know what I mean? It creates, I'm making little stair steps with my hands for people listening. It creates little stair steps that bring you to the bigger thing.
Yep.
That was my quick little interjection into interrupting Ian. Proceed, my friend. Sorry, dude. I didn't mean to do that. That was weird.
He totally did.
Okay, I've got a real world example of what I'm trying to do inside my business is I want to try and do some more mural design, but I can't the only way you're going to get more mural designs is doing more murals. So wherever I can, I've just had it passed by our town council that I can decorate one of the skate ramps at the skate park, mainly because I said I'd pay for it. But it shouldn't be too much, just a bunch of paint. But the thing is, it's me thinking, okay, what can I do? I need to get people interested in that side of my work. I need physical proof that I can do it. And so I have one, I have the first one I did, which was videoed, which was, it was a real blessing that I could have that, because it just, seeing the process gives confidence for people wanting you to come in and do it, rather than just sort of, because it, if I showed just the final product, it could have been me making a mock-up of it. But what also happens is that video did really well in terms of views on Instagram. And then I produced a YouTube video showing people how I did my first mural. So I always look at it as in terms of how can I spread this over multiple platforms, even if I did it for free. So what, for the council one, for the my local town, I'll get I will collaborate with a local videographer. Hopefully, if there's one around, it's only a small town. But, get it really nicely produced in terms of the video of me doing it, maybe get some reactions from the skaters. Hopefully they like it. But, it's just, and then I've got another one lined up for a bedroom wall mural and it's just.
And design cuts.
And design cuts as well.
Exclusive.
So, I think you have to just be proactive. If you think, okay, I want to do this, then just put yourself out there to get that work in terms of okay, I really want to do I really like doing the skateboard stuff. Say you want to be do designs for skateboards, then just constantly push out skateboard designs all the time. So Dustin said, you come like an authority in that area because you've just done so much work that one of those pieces is going to resonate with a designer for Plan B skateboards or something like that, whatever it may be. So
you know what I love though, Ian? You're humble enough to kind of go back to square one, even though you're super established and you've got this big following. You're going and doing a bunch of these murals super cheap or for free in cases, turning up and getting your hands dirty and buying your own equipment, and you're not getting fancy. And it's the same thing I'm trying to do. I think I'm finally going to launch my new business show next week, for example. I'm very happy to go on a bunch of podcasts that have 20 listeners. I don't care. I'm not about to get high and mighty and be like, oh, well, I've done this and that. You can't think that way. When you're trying to get your work out there, you got to be patient and you've got to actually think, you know what? I will take literally anyone who's going to pay my work attention and I'm going to appreciate that. There's people who are going to have 5,000 followers and feel like they're too fancy to go and do the free mural, which you're doing when you're crushing it. And as someone that 5,000 follower person is looking up to, Do you see kind of where I'm going with it? Like,
the thing is, it's just because I've done well on one platform doesn't mean it's going to translate onto other things. And so, like, YouTube is another one that's not earning me much money at the moment, but
you're figuring it out and you're building it up and you're learning your craft.
And I can see the potential. The thing is, I can see, the mural design has led into, even though I've only just recently started it, has already led into me collaborating with like from my friend's company who does like the electronic paint, electric paint. That was cool. Just like mind blowing on that. And so it's just like, not having to, I suppose, obviously the money thing is something I have to work. I need to earn money somehow. I can't just keep doing free mural stuff. But I know that if I take a cut and not compare, the thing is comparison to other people and seeing that they're, might be doing really well on all their products they're pushing out, and me thinking, oh, hang on a minute, am I doing the right thing? I've got like my family to provide for. Shouldn't I just stop focusing on these things and focus on the things that's actually making me money? But I think that I know that down the road, if I put in this work, like I did with that thing where I spoke about Chris Spooner's advice, is that it hopefully will earn me money in the future. It's like that, it's long term. Like,
yeah, I'm obsessing with this at the minute, you guys. Like, in every part of my life, including my personal life, I'm trying to think short-term investment or sacrifice for long-term results. I'm seriously kind of starting to scare myself with how obsessed I'm getting over this stuff, because it's taking over a bit and I can't chill out because I'm constantly thinking about like, how's this going to play out in 10 years time? And it's so true for,
can you give an example?
So true for your work. Like I finally bit the bullet and invested a small amount of my savings in stocks, for example. Mm-hmm. That's an example. Instantly lost a bunch of money, right? And I'm like, great. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. But I'm like, okay, well, let's see where it's at in 10 years time.
No, yeah.
And like another example, I want to go probably do a Skillshare course as well. And that'll be a like disproportionate like sacrifice right now in terms of time and effort, and might not earn very much, but it's another little breadcrumb out there, like we talked about.
Yeah.
And that'd be kind of fun. And what's that going to add up to in 10 years? And just all these things like.
And I think there's, we recommended it on the show a few weeks ago, and it's still, his books are so good. Austin Kleon's Show Your Work, and just those. Yes. And he mentions that about like, breaking down. So, posting this one little piece now, once a day for a month or once a day for a week, is 7 bit, and then just all those small little bits add up to a massive amount of work by the end of the year. Yeah. And, with all that work, it's hard for people not to notice, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I would say if there was like, if this episode is resonating with people, there's 3 things like that could be your toolkit to like getting more attention. That's those 2 Austin Kleon books, Share Your Work and Steal Like an Artist. And then there's an amazing piece you can immediately go to online by a guy named Kevin Kelly called 1,000 True Fans, where he talks about how all you have to get is 1,000 people that absolutely love what you're doing and you can make a living, which sounds like a lot, but think about like, if you think about what Tom was saying about going on a podcast with 20 or 30 people. If you convert 5 of those people and people that love what you're doing, you don't have to do that many times before you're getting there. And before you even get there, you're already starting to see the benefits. But those 2 Austin Kleon books and just Google 1,000 True Fans by Kevin Kelly, they will change you. I mean, they really will.
They're quite, those books are really short as well. So it's not actually, they're actually big reads, which is really handy, especially for someone like me who doesn't, I get a bit overwhelmed with big pages. Saying that, I've got a couple of books down here that are massive. But yeah.
I love the idea of, all right, imagine for a second, at the end of our year, it tells us all the stuff we've done to put ourselves out there. And it maps it year on year. Like when your phone tells you how many steps you've done and that kind of thing. Imagine if it did it with your creative work, where it's like, well, last year you didn't really do a whole lot, but this year you went to 7 conferences, you took, 71 selfies with people, you posted this many times on social media, you left this many comments on other people's stuff. like on
That'd
and
be
on.
such
And
a cool little app or
you,
something.
yeah, like you appeared on this many podcasts and you did free work for this many people and made this many connections. Like that would probably be impossible to build, but how cool would it be to have that little stat?
Oh, there's
And
gotta
if
be
you kind of
some
like,
way.
if you just have that in your head, like imagine having those numbers, like every little breadcrumb, like we say, every little action where you're putting yourself out there is a new opportunity for someone to find your work, hire you, open up a door to a acquaintance who becomes a friend, who opens up a door to another acquaintance who
Yeah.
gets you a book deal with your illustrations, or gets you to go do lettering for your dream client, or whatever it might be. Like you just gotta put yourself out there.
It's so true. Like I think about like when we were talking about the about hey, like what's working for you, what's working for me. We were all talking lots of times before we start recording. We'll all talk about a brief of our week to each other, and I had just noticed like that in my business is growing bigger, but it's not that I like all of a sudden started doing some weird strategic thing. It's just that like you're saying, like so many things. You know, it's been a little over 6 years now. 6 years of doing some blog posts, doing products, going to conferences, doing webinars, doing free things, and you keep doing them, and eventually, it's true. Like I'll Google things. I went to Google to research some retro stuff the other day, and like myself showed up at the top of like my research results as I tried to research the subject, and you just realize all these things. Oh yeah, I did that. Oh yeah, there's that. It builds up, and it's like magic. It almost will
It
surprise you.
compounds.
Yeah, and it's not a lot of work every day. It's just a little bit here and there. Makes a ton.
Yeah. Or 6 years could have gone by and you operated in a bubble rather, and like no one knew your work and no one cared.
Yeah.
Like that could have played out.
But what do you mean?
I mean, like if you hadn't have done all the stuff you've done over the last 6 years,
Oh yeah.
it would be completely different for you today.
Yeah.
And I don't believe, like, as awesome as your work is, it, like you say, it's not build it and they will come. You could have done all this awesome work and it sat there gathering dust and no one ever heard about it, and you never put yourself out there.
Right.
And you're not on this show. Like this show's a way of us putting ourselves out there.
Right. Yep.
It's another example.
Huge way. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then too, I mean, this goes for all of us, but like it's 6 years of retro stuff. I mean, it kind of strayed a little bit, but like it's mostly things focused on retro stuff. That's a long time to invest in retro stuff, but it paid off, you know, in the same way that, you know, Ian doing lettering or you building community around design. You really do. It really does help if you can find that thing and say, I'm going to stick with this. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it forever. Doesn't mean I can't do something else, but I need to stick to something and be consistent. The person who can do that wins. Try to think of someone who hasn't done that and has been and gotten noticed. It's hard to think of an example. You have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like you say, you can do stuff around that. It's just that people need to understand who you are and what you're about, like really quickly. So, like, you know, Dustin is the retro man, and whatever
the jumpy rascal. That was it. It wasn't cheeky rascal.
Love
but
rascal.
You know, that doesn't stop him from doing other projects around that, though, does it? You know, I think you can expand on that by having your core. You know, for me, yeah, my core thing is lettering and letters, and he did that. But then I thought, you know, I narrowed it down. Just, you know, I focused on the calligraphy at first, and then it sort of expanded to some more of the hand lettering. Now it's expanding to, you know, videos and mural things and using new technology like the iPad. And it's weird. It's once you've come down and you narrowed it down like that funnel, like Tom draws on his Instagram page.
I like me triangles.
Yeah, your upside down triangles is that once you get to that bottom point and you think, okay, this is it. This is the thing that...
It's actually just a self-portrait.
Yeah.
Told you, got a thin chin.
And then I think Tom's triangle can then turn up the other way, and then you can sort of spread out a bit more within that niche. It's sort of like funneling it into that niche and then spreading it out again.
Well, Ian, it's an example for yourself. Like I've noticed, so you did lettering. Well, we both kind of started with retro stuff, and then you pretty quickly took a turn off to lettering, and I stuck to the retro stuff. But Now you're on, like this podcast, where like you get invited to talk places, and I think people genuinely are interested in just hearing you talk. They don't want to see your letters. There's a group of people that, like, I mean, people do, but I'm saying there's a lot of people that just want to hear what is his thoughts on social media, what's his thoughts on how to make work. That's why they're listening. They can't see your letters here. So that's another way. Like, that has nothing to do with lettering, but that lettering gave you that rise up to be able to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And
even like you say, spreading out, Ian, it's like that's not so much to do with lettering, but even within lettering, like you say, now you're doing Procreate, now you're doing like the electric wall murals, and all these random disciplines start opening up that are kind of within your niche, but all totally disparate.
Yeah. And the thing is, you look at like other thing, you look at a lot of YouTubers start off with like one particular niche that they focus on, and they build their audience around that. But then they spread out into sort of other areas, and they start collaborating with other people and producing new types of work, but it still has that essence of what they did when they began. So like it might be a photographer, but then they may expand more into film, because that's part of photography, and that can also go into sort of like maybe talking about the sort of creativity and stuff like that. That's another area they can go into. So I think once you find that thing that you're happy to talk about for ages, then you can like open it up a bit as you get going, as you get known for it as well, I suppose. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So have we got any quick closing thoughts in terms of getting in front of more people? Like in a nutshell, what do we think the best tip each is?
Mine would probably just get show your work book. it has I think it's like 10 tips that it goes through, and there's like a funny page where it says all these different things that you think you should post, all crossed out, apart from the one that says work. And there's like there's selfies, and there's like cat photos and stuff like that. I think it's just a really helpful book to understand what you should do with getting yourself out there in terms of your work, and where to post it, and just encouraging you to keep posting it out there and think long term. I think is the I think if you can practice patience, and I know a lot of the sort of motivational business people say this, but only the ones that have actually done it, I think, is the practicing patience, but also, putting stuff out there constantly. I think, the one person that, won't keep promoting him, but like when a music artist comes to him and he goes, "Oh, what should I do?" Unknown one, like, write a song every day and post it out there for free, like for the next 2-3 years. And it's, but not a lot of people want to hear that. And but if you're willing to like, just, I think it was like just nothing good will happen. Not like it was bad, but nothing good will happen for like a couple of years. And that's that's why
I love watching people who are just starting to break through.
Yeah.
As well, because it can be very telling to see what they're doing, and it's like, oh wow, okay, they are sharing prolifically on all their social media accounts. They're doing collaborations. They're going to events and ceremonies and conferences, and I keep seeing it. It's like a repeatable pattern.
Yeah.
Right. Every time someone starts to pop, and I'm like, yep, there it is again. Like, none of them are like this super withheld character that's not willing to share with the world. They're putting themselves out there, like physically in the real world, online, through their art form, just everywhere.
And I think counterintuitively, do things that are valuable to other people if you want them to be interested in you. The harder you try to pull someone in by making them interested in you, the more it doesn't work. But the more you do things for other people that is interesting, the more it helps. A case in point is Austin Kleon, who wrote these books that we're talking about, great, Steal Like an Artist and Share Your Work. He does blackout poetry, but most people probably know him for these books. It's not that the blackout poetry isn't great. It's not that people don't buy it or that he probably couldn't make a living from it. It's that people are really interested when he's giving them information. You open one of these books up and it makes you want to close the book and start working. That's giving to somebody. And I just think that's so powerful. And he's an example of that fact.
Yeah.
Maybe we can see if we can get him on the show. He's got a new book coming out in 2019. So
I pre-ordered.
Yeah, I was quite tempted to as well.
I'm ready. I haven't read his stuff, so you guys reach out as the fanboys in the group, because it does sound awesome. I want to read it too. But let's try and get him on the show. That'd be pretty fun.
There'll be so much value in that one. Oh.
So send him an email where it looks like you've blacked out loads of words. So it's like in an image, being like, we cordially invite you to be on the Honest Designer Show, and like black out all the other words. That would cut through the noise.
Well, and 6 degrees of separation, or probably less, there's probably someone listening that knows Austin Kleon. If you can, introduce us.
Yeah.
We
Give
will
our
love
best
you
to
forever.
Austin. Tell him that we've mentioned his books about 9 times on the show.
Yeah,
because they're very good.
Like people, I've had loads of people comment, "Hey, bought that book because you mentioned it on the show." So it's like, yeah, we could,
yeah. We're coming to collect that £4.50 in Amazon royalties, Austin. So you got to repay that value, man.
Not to mention Austin. I feel like there's some sort of fate there.
Yeah, it's ripe for confusion. Think of the hijinks that would ensue. Cool. Well, I hope that was helpful, guys. We will have Lisa back next time. We will be slightly more awake as well, because I'm definitely feeling dopey today. But hopefully there was some value in today's episode for you guys. Hopefully you're feeling fired up to go and share your work around, put yourself out there, reach new audiences, collaborate, have some fun with it. And on that note, we'll see you next time.
See you later.
See ya.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. As always, you can find full show notes over at honestdesigners.com, or find us over on iTunes and now Spotify by searching for The Honest Designers Show. And remember, we're now on social media too, if you search for Honest Designers. If today's episode helped you, then it would mean the world to us if you took just a moment to leave us a quick review over on iTunes, as this is one of the best ways for other designers to discover the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week right here on The Honest Designers Show.